Welcome, everyone. Good evening, afternoon, wherever this finds you. I'm Fernando Gutierrez City, chair of the board of the Forum for the Scottish Baronage, and it's a pleasure to host this special webinar. As part of our forum's mission to bring together Scotland's barons and preserve our rich heraldic heritage, we are thrilled to have Bruce Durie with us today. Dr. Durie is a globally recognized expert in genealogy and heraldry, with the distinction of serving as Shenaki to the Chief of Durie and holding the right of audience in the Lion Court. His deep knowledge of heraldry is unparalleled, and we are honored to have him share his expertise with us today. Dr. Durie will cover advanced heraldic topics, including the inheritance of arms, cadet arms for descendants, and the correct use of heraldic flags, amongst many other issues. These are areas where his guidance is truly invaluable, and we're very excited for what promises to be a fascinating certain presentation and hopeful discussion. The recording of the webinar and the information on the slides will be made available to you. I would like to thank Penderleith and Jim Slagle most especially for their efforts in organizing this excellent event. Please do stay tuned for our next webinar, as well as a gathering we are planning for next year in September in Scotland to celebrate our 5th anniversary since founding the forum. So, without further ado, let me ask Jim to start Bruce Durie's presentation on Scottish Heraldry.
Well, hello, Bruce Durie here. You may all be in receipt of your letters patent, which will look rather like the ones on the slide there, or you may have had them gussied up with embellishments, borders, extra arms painted on, etc., etc. Quite a lot of leeway. We should now look at what you can do with these arms, and maybe what you should have done when you got the arms in the first place. You could ask, once they're in the public register, for the Lion Court to send you, or the Lion Office rather, to send you the register page. Just an A4 image. It's quite a good thing to have as a shorthand. You can stick it beside your larger letters patent. They'll be exactly the same, just in portrait format rather than landscape. But what else could you do? And what happens in the next generation? At some point, one of your descendants is going to have to rematriculate these arms a few generations on. You can cut that back a bit by first giving the names of all your children and their spouses and your grandchildren when you first petition for your arms. There's no absolute need to rematriculate every 3 generations, but it's a good idea, and the Lion Court likes it because it keeps everything fresh, and then you add more people to that as the generations roll away. The other thing, if you didn't do this at the time you got your petition, but think, nuts, I should have done that, you can indicate your children, grandchildren, etc. to the Lion Court, sending the proofs, of course, their birth, marriage certificates, and ask them to be put on the register of successions. They'll probably charge you a little bit for that. Not too much. So what arms can younger children get? Well, your heir is always going to get your arms all the way down, but your eldest son or eldest heir will have your arms for your life with a label of 3 on it, and that heir's heir will have your arms with a label of 5 on it during your lifetime. And then when you die, the whole thing moves up a ratchet, your heir gets your arms, that person's heir gets the label of 3, etc. You don't have to have those painted on your letters patent, they're automatic. Your heir can just use them. But some people do like them painted on just for the avoidance of doubt, and it's a bit of extra decoration. So, what about the younger children though? Let's say you have a second son. There are 2 ways to indicate that. By the way, your other children, younger children, will have to petition for these. They are not automatic. It's a separate process. So your second son, for example, could indicate his position in the family by a gold bordure round the arms, or you could use a brazier of Cadnecy, small charge. Second son would be a crescent. A fourth son, for example, would be a red bordure, or the appropriate brazier would be a martlet. The colours of those braziers will have to harmonise with the arms, of course. Here, the crescent and the martlet are both going on gold, so they can't be argent. They have to be colours, and indeed they are. These new petitions will cost you, but, why not? The way these bordures and other things are arranged is by what we call the Stodart system. Now, this isn't any kind of rule or law. It's just a rule of thumb, and the good Mr. Stodart pulled these rules together as a help a long time ago, and he suggested that the second son should have a gold bordure, the fifth son a blue bordure, etc., etc. He also suggested that a daughter, or all daughters in fact, should bear the father's arms undifferenced on a lozenge shape, or sometimes it's an ellipse, which we call a cartouche. That's not an oval, by the way. Oval means egg-shaped. The later generations of the direct line will be differenced by lines of division. If you look at the fess across the middle here, it's invected or it's engrailed or whatever. And if you look at the generations below, second, third, fourth sons, exactly the same. Once they've got the bordure, then the bordure itself can be invected, engrailed, indented, whatever. But this can get complicated by the time you get to the fourth son of the third generation, and you've got multiple bordures and multiple lines of difference and so on. Down in the straight line tends to be not bordures, but indication by cadences, braziers. So a crescent there, two mullets in the next generation, and so on. But that can get messy. It doesn't produce, in every occasion, a pictorial family tree, but it's a pretty good thing, and if you can stick to it, then do so. Here is a collection of the braziers that we use, just for your reference. And what if one of your daughters decides to have her own arms? Make a petition for that. No reason why not. Typically, the difference used is a heart. You will see that on the arms of Princess Anne, for example. And there's no reason that a woman can't have her arms on a heater-shaped shield. The old story about women are not warriors, so they can't have shields is just nonsense. Go and ask your grandma if she's a warrior or not, and you'll get a very simple one-word answer, I suspect. There's the lozenge, there's the ellipse, but it could have a shield. Here's an example, a real example from one of your barons, Sean Collin. He got arms for his second son with the gold bordure, you'll notice, and his daughter also petitioned for arms, and he chose for her an ellipse shape, but also holding a heart, which is rather cute. There's C. Pegasus here, holding up the heart. Next thing is, what about impaling arms? What about putting arms together? Well, this happens in two circumstances mainly. One is where someone holds an office which also has arms, and the second is marriage between two people who have arms. This example here is Joe Morrow, the current Lord Lion. In the centre are his own arms. When he became Lord Lion, he impaled those with the lion arms, and which is the more important? The officer Lord Lion is more important than the individual, and therefore the lion arms go on the dexter side, his own arms go on the sinister side. And that's how we differentiate different Lord Lions in succession. They have arms one side, lion, other side, their own. When it comes to a married couple, it's slightly more complex. Let's say Mr. Barr, who has arms with a bar on them, and Miss Cross, arms across on them, and they meet at a dance, and they decide to get married, and they become the cross bars. Notice two things. One, his name goes at the end because it's the more important one, so they are legally surnamed Bar, and his arms go on the dexter side because they're considered more important ones. I'll show you a countervailing example in a minute if you're bristling against that. What about their children? Well, in normal circumstances, their children would have the arms quartered. The impalement only refers to the couple, as a married couple. The children get the quartered arms with his arms, the bar, in first and fourth quarters, and the mother's arms in second and third quarters. But if Miss Bar is an heraldic heiress, in other words, she's going to inherit her father's arms, then they will go on an escutcheon in the middle of Mr. Barr's arms. It's called an escutcheon of pretense because he is pretending to those arms as they go down to the next generation. This only works if Miss Barr's father actually does have arms. She can't just pick something off the internet. It has to be an armigerous family. A family that actually has been granted arms. Here's a counterexample. When Anna, the Duchess of Hamilton, married Lord Douglas, she was by far the more important person, richest woman in Scotland at the time, and therefore her name goes at the end, Hamilton, and her arms, the Hamilton arms, go on the dexter side. The Douglas arms go on the sinister. And that's the way it's been ever since. They are the Douglas Hamiltons, and these are their arms. I've given some examples. You can read that in your own time on the handout. What about colours? You know that metal goes on a colour and colour goes on a metal, but there are exceptions to that. The circumstances we call proper, or another one, natural. So heraldic rose proper is a red rose with green slips of leaves and yellow seeds. And you don't have to name all those. You could just say heraldic rose proper with those colours. Natural is different. Natural is a depiction of the actual thing in nature. So if you just said a dolphin, that would be a heraldic dolphin, which looks a bit like a Chinese fish. If you look it up, but a natural dolphin looks like a dolphin. And you don't have to specify the colour because it's the colour in nature. But if it's not in the blazon, you can't have it in the arms. So it just says a lion rampant gules, and every part of the lion rampant is red. If you want the tongue and the teeth and the claws blue, for example, your blazon will have to say armed langed azure. So it's not on the page, it's not there. People often ask me, can I put my order on my coat of arms if I'm a member of some order? Well, if it's a UK state order, yes, it has to be something granted by the state, an OBE or a knighthood or something of that nature. There are two exceptions to that. By special dispensation, the Order of St. John, because the Queen or the King is always the sovereign of that order, they can go on arms, and the Roman Catholic equivalent, the Order of Malta, can also be shown on the arms. And they're depicted a couple of ways. A typical one is to take the collar with the badge dangling from it and hang those around the arms. You'll see a KCMG on there. That's Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George hanging. And the one next to is Colin Powell. Actually, we've given an honorary Order of the Bath. You can't be a knight if you're not actually British, but he got arms because his father came from Jamaica, which was a UK territory at the time, and there's a Scottish link. So he got arms, and his honorary Knight of the Bath goes there. Or some people just have them dangling from the shield. The shield is placed a collie on the side. Doesn't have to be. So, as that great philosopher Mick Jagger said, you can't always get what you want. What determines what you will get in your arms? Well, obviously they will respect the surname, so that people can tell what your surname is. A Crawford is a Crawford, a Campbell is a Campbell. Before you petition for your arms, it's worth checking if you have an ancestor who have been granted arms, in which case you can get a cadet matriculation of those, probably. But the other thing is, when you're designing your arms, if they're coming from scratch, Please do not put in them things that will bind future generations. Okay, you may be a lawyer, so you want scales of justice or something in your arms, but your dear may be a truck driver, and the one after that an orthodontist, and after that an astronaut, and scales of justice are a bit irrelevant to them. Keep that for the crest, which we'll come back to. Have the arms signify things about your entire family as much as you can. Show you some examples in a moment. We'll talk about crests and mottos and their combination. Remember, if the Lord Lion doesn't like something, he will just say no, and you won't get it. You should consider Chief's crest and motto, and perhaps reflect them or answer them in some way. What I mean by that, suppose your chief's motto is go forth, then yours could be an answer to that, like I've been forth, or I'm going forth, or you go forth, I'm busy, or something of that nature. Obviously related, and obviously answering that original motto. You could change, reflect the chief's crest. Here are 3 lions rampant, one holding a cinquefoil, an anchor if you're a sailor, a wheel of industry, something like that, appropriate to yourself. For your next generation, you can change that. So the one that does become an orthodontist or an astronaut could have some other change to the crest. The fact that you have a choice of almost any crest, almost any motto, should you want it, is obvious from the fact that different families, different surnames, may share a crest. Dunbars and the Hepburns and various others have a horse's head bridled. There's 2 branches of Campbell, Breadalbin and Codder, same surname, but they've got different crests. The boar's head cooked, or a swan, and they have different mottos as well, you notice. And there's 2 families, Flankerson and Shaw of Stodart, who have the same motto. So don't feel constrained by this, but make it appropriate if you can. I'm a big fan, by the way, of plant badges. Originally, there was none of this putting a crest on a badge and sticking it on your hat. That's something that came from the British Army, not just the Scottish regiments. The original system was to carry the plant of your clan or family in your hat or on your arm, so that people would look at you and say, that's a juniper, you're one of ours. That's a cranberry, you're one of theirs. That's a bit of a fir tree, you must be a McGregor, that kind of thing. It's more authentic, and some people use their plant badges in their crests. So here's a couple of examples, both McInnes. First one is Ken McInnes at the bottom here. He got arms granted posthumously to his ancestor from Durie, Lord Angus McInnes. You'll see it contains things which are very typical of McInnes arms. Conclaven Castle, a lymphad on the galley on the sea, a boar's head erased, the Campbell Gironi because they come from Argyll, but because Angus went to America, Virginia in fact, well known for his cotton, the chief of his arms has 3 cotton balls in it. Generations on, Ken McInnes, who he and his ancestors have been quite involved in learning, so they have torches of learning either side of the cotton ball in the chief, indicating we're some generations on. His crest, you'll notice, by the way, is an axe, a Lochaber axe, but the tartan is sleeved in the actual Clan Angus tartan. He also got a flag, which I'll talk about in a moment. Here's another McInnes, and you can clearly see they're both McInneses because top here, Lord Angus McInnes, Conclaven Castle, that's a sailing ship because going to America. In this case, he's chosen the coast of Colonsay, which is where they're from, around there, around Durie. And the second quarter there, those are the hills of Durie, with stag's antlers in them, which are also fairly typically McInnes. His descendant, Malcolm, got those arms for his ancestor. For himself, he added 2 wheels because his father and grandfather both worked on the railways, on the railroad. The 3 salmon, as opposed to 1, indicate the number of generations. By the way, why are these quartered? Highland arms, where they typically are quartered, doesn't mean the same thing as quartering because of a marriage. In this case, they're actually not really quartered. There's a green cross over the whole thing, and then the other charges fit into the quarters of the cross, but has the same effect. Also a crest, in this case holding a scroll of learning rather than a soaking great axe, and also a flag, which we'll come to. Here's another one, which is a Grierson, It's obviously a Grierson because of the fetterlocks on the arms. The crest is different, it's fire axes because they're firemen. The flags are different. The arms are different between the father and the son by the addition of braziers, etc. They have different mottos. In the case of the third son, is a motto in Icelandic called Nos, in some way, indicating their deep ancestry. And you can see the different mottos on their flags, so you can tell who's father and who's a younger son. Did you ask for a flag? If you didn't, you can subsequently petition to have a particular flag. I'll show you the flags you'll get in a moment, but a couple of things to remember. One, the national flag of Scotland is the Saltire. Do not, under any circumstances, ever, whether at the games or on your house or whatever, fly the lion rampant on the gold background in the double trace here. That's not the flag of Scotland, it's the flag of the sovereign, and only the sovereign, the king or the queen, and the great officers of state of Scotland can display those. If the great officer of state, if the king or the Lord Lion or someone comes to your house, by all means stick up a lion rampant, or if they're at the games, put up a lion rampant. It means that person is there. So let's talk about flags. First of all, the difference between a banner and standard. A banner is square or rectangular, a standard is elongated and triangular. You'll see references to the Royal Standard of the UK. In fact, it's a banner composed of the Royal Arms. In its Scottish version, Scotland first and fourth, England second, Ireland in the third quarter. Wales doesn't have that because it's not a sovereign nation, it's a principality. The actual flag you get, I'll deal with in a moment. Their size is often appropriate to the circumstances. For example, you may have a table decoration with your arms on it, that you put it as a placeholder on a dinner table, or you may be carrying the flag around, or you may be flying outside your house or something like that. But for special heraldic flags, their sizes are fixed. We talk about the staff, that's the pole that the flag is on. The hoist is the bit of the flag nearest to the staff. The fly is the triangular bit that goes out to the side. If you put your arms on a flag, then regardless of whether they face Nectar or Sinister on the arms, on the flag, they will respect the flag. That's a good thing. That means if you print it and it goes through to the other side, you're okay when it's seen from the other way. And often there will be fringes, usually silver and gold. Or you could choose the colours of your arms. In the top example, they're black and white, so that's what the fringe of the flag is. Should it have a swallowtail, a dent in the end, or should it not? The dent indicates followers. So if you're a chief or something like that, you can have a dent, a tail in your flag. Sometimes they will have tracts. In other words, the number of compartments, not compartments, number of tracks going across, usually 2, 3 or 4, and they will be the colours of your arms, colours of your livery, and then there are compartments, these are the things going at an angle, which may have the motto in them. Some flags you don't need permission for. A personal banner, something you'll carry about at you, as in the photograph there. That was a heralded procession we had back in 2016 in Glasgow, and we all carried our own arms on a flag. Notice it's the arms on the flag, not the shield. Don't put the shield on a flag, you put the arms, the bit inside the shield. You can have one of those anytime. You don't need anyone's permission. But the size is determined by who you are. If you're a feudal baron, it's 3 feet square. If you're other armigers, it's rectangular, 70 by 90 centimetres. My son is a slightly different one because he's got the label of 3, and we put those on our table banners too. That's fine. But anything else requires the Lord Lion grants permission. A standard is granted to those who have a tail, and it's meant to indicate a headquarters. It's not an indication that you personally are present. Personal banner does that. There's the split end, and there's a Scottish baronet who is also a chief. As it happens, his arms are in the hoist, and then 2 tracks with his crest and the plant badge, you'll notice, in the fly, and then his motto in 2 compartments. The Heraldic Banner, which is rectangular, again varies in size. Feudal Baron will have something 3 foot square, other armatures slightly smaller and rectangular. So there's the banner of Scotland on the left there, and there's the flag of Estonia, as it happens, in banner form. And then there's the Guild Guide Association. They've got a complex set of banners according to your grade in the organisation, and you can tell exactly what someone is representing, whether it's a person like the commissioner or a district or an individual group or whatever, by the size and the nature of the banner. Guidon, that's shorter than the standard, and feudal barons get these, actually. Also, non-baronial layers for the following, but some averagers get those as well. The one on the left there is John Cadnecy of William Gam, who has St Andrew's Cross in the hoist, and then his crest and his motto, and the colours of his arms and tracts in the fly. The other one is a chief, and he has his arms in the hoist and a representation of his crest in the fly, and also not his motto but his slughorn. And interestingly, on the actual letters patent and in the registered page, I've never seen this before, they've drawn a slughorn crier, the person who shouts the war cry in battle. Can howl. Every armature can get a pennon. It's a triangular flag. They're typically 4 feet long, 120 centimetres, with an unsplit end. There's Royce McNeill, and the next one across Timothy Spalding, who is a baron. In both cases, got their arms in the hoist and their mottos on 2 tracts in the fly. And there's a slightly shorter pennon this gentleman has, with his arms, and his motto is across 2 tracts. Sometimes that is counterchanged to reflect the colouring. And then there's the pinsel. This is really for chiefs, or if the chief has delegated authority to someone, like a local commissioner, for example, then they could have a pennon as well. It's the kind of thing you see stuck in the front of cars from an embassy and that sort of thing. I'll show you 2 here. There's Malcolm Caithness, who's a peer and a baronet, but also the aforementioned John Shaw of Durie, who is a chief. There's his pinsel again. And then there's the Gonfanon, which also requires permission, or some of them do. That is actually what passes for the coat of arms of the Scottish Parliament. They have the whole thing in a Gonfanon shape, and you'll see those hanging around the Parliament if you go there. Incidentally, you notice how dark that blue is. People often ask me, what is the correct colour for the blue or a saltire? There isn't one. If you're looking for a Pantone reference or something, there won't be one. It just has to be obviously blue, like not purple and not pink, blue. There are circumstances where you could have a Gonfanon. Here's a good example, and you will all have seen these, the kind of things carried about at the games, indicating an individual with that person's own crest badge on it, or indicating an entire clan or family, as here. These are the MacGregors, the Clan Gregor, and they are carrying the chief's crest and motto in a strap and buckle, indicating kinsman, rather than the chief himself being carried on a Gonfanon, and that's fine. And there's the table Gonfanon used as a place setting. So I have 2. I have one that has my arms on it, and I have one that has my crest on it, with our tartan behind. Sometimes these get granted together. This is the registered page from Barclay of Towie, who is chief, and he has both a standard and a pinsel. Why? Because he asked for them, no harm in asking. Notice, by the way, the blue chapeau of maintenance. That's because he is the representative of Barclay of Towie Barclay, but he no longer has the land. So he's not a baron as such, but he is the representative of the name. If he were the feudal baron, and he still owned the land, he would have a red chapeau of maintenance. And the last one is a Burgee, which is for naval things. So like the Yacht Club, there's the Royal Highland Yacht Club, who put their Burgee here, and then there's the Boat Club associated with the Scottish Lawyers, the Bar Yacht Club. They could also be rectangular. Typically they're triangular and they are quite small. And you stick it on your yacht or on your boat club or whatever. Now you'll also see pike banners. They're usually only on the pikes for special occasions. I like this one that's shown in the picture here. University of Aberdeen gave a pike banner to what used to be the Highland regiments combined, and it's the arms of Aberdeen on there with gold bullion threads around the outside. So these might be silver in that particular case. And you can have a personal pike banner too, why not? I looked at who recently got heraldic flags in the last sort of 30, 50 years or so. It's interesting that a lot of communities chose to have flags granted, and so did lots of feudal barons and other people too. But the vast majority were just straightforward armigers. You will see in guidance that the pennon isn't used very much these days. Well, I found 79 of them just in the last 50 years, so I don't believe that one. The feudal barons, 165 of those, got standards. One got Guidon, 5 got pennons. Here is my good friend Jean-Guy de Saint-Julien on the hard side, and below that, Vartea, the Baron of Ranish. The Swiss gentlemen that I do not know. And of course, they got their arms because they have a feudal barony in Scotland. You would get a flag if you were a peer of the realm or a chief or something. If you're just a feudal baron, you can, of course, have standards. Here are some examples of that. Ross of Glenfalloch and Lagland of Becruvy have these. In this case, they don't put their arms in the hoist, they put the St Andrew's flag in the hoist. And even though they didn't get the red chapel maintenance in their arms, they do get to ensign it on the staff of their heraldic flag. These are both 4 yards long. Here's another couple of examples. Grant of Glenmorrison, who is a baron, and Nicholson of Balvenie, with their arms in the hoist. And you'll notice that Balvenie has put his plant badge in the standard rather than his crest. The upper one, Glenmorrison, has both the crest and the plant badge in there. Also the Glenmorrison tartan. Now, the other thing you could have done, and maybe you're kicking yourself if you didn't, is you could have had your letters painted gussied up with extra embellishments, extra arms painted on, such as the Lord Lion's arms, or the arms of all the earls, if you choose to do that. You could have your flag, well, you should have your flag painted on if you've got one, a floral border. This one happens to be thistles intertwined with some other plant that is meaningful to this particular gentleman. He asked for a pennon, so he got one, and it's painted on his letters patent. Rather good. That's all I'll say about that. If you're wondering where I got information on the very latest coats of arms and flags and crests and everything, there are 2 books. One is my Ordinary of Arms that I produced last year, and there's a companion volume almost ready to go to print, which has crests, mottos, supporters, flags, etc. Ordinary Volume 3, the blue one, only has coats of arms in it. The red one, the companion, will have crests, mottos, supporters, badges, flags, and so on. If you're looking for a really good book on heraldry, the best one ever written is over 100 years old and slightly out of date. It's Heraldry Scotland by Stevenson. I think it's so good, but it's so hard to come by that I produced a facsimile version in 2014, a centenary edition, 2 volumes in one, and it's worth having for the actual chapter and verse on heraldry. I trust that's been of interest to you, and I'll be happy to get emails from you if you have any other questions. Go and look at my books page where you'll see those and other books that you might be interested in. Enjoy your arms, and goodbye.
Yeah, we're back. If you do have questions for Bruce, I invite anyone that wants to stay on and chat to do so. One of your initial slides spoke about, the recommendation to share the names of our heirs or children with the Lord Lion's court. So that for me was what's interesting.
Okay. In fact, there are 3 interesting things in there. One, yes, it's a good idea to name all your children and all their children when you get arms. And one of the reasons is, I may have said this, there's an expectation that people should rematriculate their arms every third generation. There's no legal requirement to, but it just keeps it fresh. But you can go beyond that if you've already built in another 2 generations to your original patent. You can then leave it one more generation, and somebody else gets to pay for it, and then just top it up to the next 3 generations. And this gives the Lion Court a knowledge of who the next successors are. But the Lion Court also has a couple of other registers that nobody knows about. One is a register of genealogies and birthplaces, and the other one is a register of successions. So anyone, if with proofs, can submit to say, these are my heirs, these are my heirs' heirs, and there's my heirs' heir, and they can be registered for future posterity as well, which is also quite a good thing. The other thing I should say about succession is this. Scots law is strange on this topic. For example, a few years ago, we wiped away the whole concept of illegitimacy. Nobody is now illegitimate. The child is absolutely the child of these parents, legally and in every way. They can inherit the house, the money, the car, the cat and the dog, yeah? But there's a line at the bottom of that act that says, this does not apply to peerages, titles, honours, dignities, or coats of arms. So a child not born to parents whose marriage is registered in the appropriate way in your country cannot inherit arms. There's another act, the Embryology and Human Fertility Act, which deals with sperm donors, egg donors, surrogacy, that kind of thing. And that act says the child is absolutely legally the child of the two people who are engaging in this. And the sperm donor, the egg donor, the surrogate mother have absolutely no legal claims on that child whatsoever. But there's a line at the bottom that says this does not apply to peerages, titles, honours, dignities, and coats of arms. In other words, you could have the strange situation where this man has a coat of arms and they have a son by some donation or surrogacy. That child cannot inherit that man's arms, but he could inherit the arms of his biological father, with whom he's had no contact for whatever. And the third one is adoption. The Adoption Act says the child is absolutely, legally, the child of the adopting parents, not the birth parents. And this child can inherit everything, the house, the car, the money, the cat, and the dog. But there's a line at the bottom that says this doesn't apply to peerages, titles, honours, dignities, or coats of arms. So there are some. This is because our lawmakers didn't have the courage to push this one to the limit. I mean, why should an adopted child who's been brought up in the family all his life not just be treated like every other member of the family? They are, except when it comes to these heritable titles, heritable offices, and arms. And some people are finding that a problem.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask any other questions to Bruce?
It would be interesting to have a brief outline on coat of arms and female heirs, heiresses. In terms,
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what surname they have to keep and so on.
Okay, right. There's a peculiarity in Scots law that females keep their maiden surnames after marriage. So my mother would be known as Frances Cutland or Durie, and you will see lots of coat of arms granted to Jane Smith or Brown. And if she's been married twice, Jane Smith or Brown or white or black, right? Doesn't matter. However, if you're getting arms are all about surname. So she will get the arms of her birth surname. If her father had arms and she is the heiress, then she will get those arms. If nobody has arms, she can petition of new for arms. I should disabuse you of something. Females do not need to have any different kind of arms. You will see it said that females cannot have a shield. This is on the principle that females are no warriors. I'd like Brooks' view on that one. Okay? Tell my grandmother she wasn't a warrior. Break your neck. So, female arms are typically nowadays granted on a shield. You can ask for a lozenge, you can ask for a cartouche. Please don't call it an oval, because that's egg-shaped. No arms of that. Where you do get the lozenge shape is in younger daughters of an armiger. While the armiger is alive, they can bear his undifferenced arms. There's no label system, but they go in a lozenge just to make clear it's, Ipswich and Wilhelmina, the three daughters. But there's no reason why a woman can't have a shield, and indeed a helm, and indeed a crest, and all the rest of it, just like everyone else.
But in terms of, sorry to go back to the key, but just I might be a bit slow, but just to fully understand the matter of inheriting arms and keeping the surname, given that arms are two surnames. So if you have an heiress who then marries, would she remain in possession of those arms, and would she pass them on to her children?
Well, let me give you an example. Margaret Elliot, Chief of Elliot. Okay, so her father was Chief of Elliot. She is the only child, as it happens, and she's the heiress. She kept her name Elliot. She married a chap, nice man, called, I think, Wilkins. But she made sure that her two sons were at birth were given the name Elliot. I think the girls are called Wilkins, on the grounds that they will never inherit. But Arabella Kincaid, Chief of Kincaid, is another example. She inherited those from her, was it a grandmother or a great aunt? And although she's married, all her children are called Kincaid, and the husband's fine with that. So you can do that. It depends what you were called at birth, and you can designate what you're called at birth. No problem with that. There's a saying in Scots law: you can be called anything you want, provided it's not for reasons of fraud. So I could sign my cheques Mouse, right? I don't think the bank would wear it, but I'm not doing anything fraudulent. But if I pretend to be someone in order to commit fraud, then I'm in trouble. But doing this sort of thing, preserving the entail, as we call it in Scotland, the woman keeps the name. If she's an armigerous heiress, she passes it on to her children or her single heir and do it that way. But here's the reverse of that problem. Imagine the female is an heiress and she marries a guy, and she's the one with the land and the money and the title and the arms and all that. He will typically change his name to hers. And this can happen 3 or 4 times down a family. It is said of the Chief of Mackenzie that he is 4 times not a Mackenzie, because it's been, they brought in a stud male, basically. Can you imagine how scrambled their Y-DNA looks? To make any sense. Happened in my line in the 1540s, happened in my chief's line in the 1870s. It's a very common thing. The Queen of Argour inherited it from his grandmother, and he wasn't even called MacLean, so he had to add MacLean to his name. Now, you can do that. You can change your name in order to get arms or a title or something, provided you do it transparently in the full sight of the Lord Lion, and nobody is worried about that. Does that make sense?
If that were done by someone who is not a Scot, say an American,
Right.
whose name documentation is derived whatever U.S. state, and then they go to Scotland and say, I want to change my name. Can they just change their names in the U.S. and show that legal name change, or do they also have to do something in the land court?
I can give you an actual example from my own client base. I'll disguise the names, okay? There's a man who was born, let's call him Jose Garcia. father's Mexican. He was brought up by his mother and his grandfather because and his grandmother, because both the father and the grandfather skedaddled as soon as the child was born. So he's left with his mother and grandmother. His mother is called, let's say, Lindsay, and she's definitely of Scottish origin. So what I got them to do was, the grandmother's still alive, I got her to write a letter, a testamentary writing, saying that, whether I call him Juan, was her heir in name and heritage. And then I got him to go to county court in 2 states, the one where he was born, the one where he lives, and change his name officially to Lindsay in both those places. And then, of course, he had to change his passport, his driving license. He's in law enforcement, so he had to go and fess up to the law enforcement authorities and say, you know me as Garcia, I'm now called Lindsay. And everybody was fine with it when they understood it. And he got a coat of arms. Of course it's possible. But you have to do it, it has to be obvious that you're not just making something up. I do know another person who has changed his name in order to get arms, and he has no connection with that surname at all. And that is going to go nowhere.
Bruce, how many generations back can you do that? I mean, my great-grandmother was a Fordyce.
Right. Well, if you can get your great-great-grandmother to write you a letter,
That's not going to happen.
you're a better man than I am. Okay. No, it's going to be for real. I mean,
Well, it's got to be within the recent generation. There you
and
go.
the Lord Lion will run a rule across it and go, come on,
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
And it's so often, I have to say, I'm dealing with a clan at the moment. We want a chief, and all sorts of people are trying to vote is the wrong word, make a preference about this on the grounds that my grandmother was a McDribble. It doesn't work. Well, my mother was a McDribble. Doesn't work if they'd born a McDribble or be a widow of a McDribble. That's the other thing. If a woman keeps her married surname and is known by, in Scottish, we say goes about as that name, then it's kind of justified, yeah? No, you can't go back to Flora MacDonald,
Okay.
6 centuries ago.
Not that I would do it anyway. I'm perfectly content with my surname, but
Noted.
it's just a curiosity point, I guess.
If you can persuade Lion that the entire family's bought into this and there's no problem with it. I mean, he was never going to get arms in the name of Garcia anyway, was he? Although I do help the Garcia who got arms, but he's Spanish. Right, carry on. Sorry.
So
Thank you. Are there other points I see? Well, William, you've joined. That's wonderful. And then there's someone calling in from my iPhone SE 388587. I'm not sure if
No photo.
then by yourself. And then there's someone iPad 55.
I am iPad 55.
Excellent.
I'm Ronald Reisinger, Baron of Inneryne.
Hello, Ronnie. We had dinner together in Edinburgh a few years.
I was fascinated by your talk today. Thank you very much.
I've never met anybody with so many baronies under his belt as you have. You bought them for your kids, and I deal with these all the time. I'll show you something in a moment when we get to it. But you have a question?
No, I'm just wanting people to know who I am and that I'm here. And I'm a bit under the weather, so I'm actually abed.
I can see that.
Aye.
And yet you're still wearing a white shirt with a button-down collar. Most people would be in a onesie by this time.
Well, I wish to dress up a little bit for the Zoom meeting.
Well, I hope you're well, and yes, looking very smart.
Thank you.
Smart there. Any other questions or points for clarification for Bruce? I'm not sure we got my iPhone SE 3. I'm not sure who that is, but any other questions?
Nancy Hamilton too. She's down there.
So I see you there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking again about the U.S. and Scottish connection, and what is commonly done in Scotland vis-a-vis surnames versus what is commonly done in the U.S. versus regarding surnames. If you have an armiger who has daughters, no sons, and then presumably the eldest daughter inherits. And
That's exactly right. If it was a piece of property, sorry, just to chip in on that one, if it was a piece of property, the three daughters would be heirs portioners. They would hold it jointly and severally. But of course, the coat of arms is impartible, so it goes to the eldest daughter.
Right, so now let's assume that maybe before she inherits, the eldest daughter marries and takes the name of her husband, and then has a child, say a son, who takes the name of his father on his birth certificate.
They've screwed that generation. She is, in Scots law, Smith or Gutierrez. I'm sorry, Fernando. Didn't mean to do that. If she wants the arms to continue, she'd be wise to put the kid's name as Smith. Otherwise, you're going to go through this complicated routine later on of change the name. Man. If you're an armigerous heiress, keep the children's name the same as yours. Does that go against the American macho tendency, do you think?
It's changing these days, but oftentimes the children take the father's surname rather than the mother's. Probably.
Well, it's even more complicated with people of Spanish heritage, because they will typically stick the mother's name on the end of their name, so you could be Garcia Isola. But of course, the children don't inherit that; they're just Garcia. But if that was a Scottish mother in there, and she was called McLafferty, it'd be wise to call the children McLafferty, which is an Irish name. Sorry, but you know what I mean. Retain the name that pertained to the arms. Arms are about surname, all about surname.
If the child takes the father's surname and then later on says, "Oh my goodness, we didn't understand all this Scottish rule,"
exactly,
then we change our name to our mother's surname.
You go through that complicated process I just described for the fictional Juan Garcia Lindsay. It can be done. It's done all the time in Scotland. Nobody is fazed by it. You just have to do it transparently and in the open.
Bruce, can I ask a quick question? Because I have a hyphenated last name, but my children bear single last names.
Okay, there are no hyphenated last names in Scotland. They're banned. Okay,
they're banned. Okay,
what's a surname? This is why there's no Chief of Douglas, because the Douglases folded into the Hamiltons, and all they've called themselves Douglas Hamilton. There's Chief of Hamilton, Duke of Hamilton, right? There's no Douglas Chief. There cannot be, because they have one surname. They are Hamiltons. So, are you worried about where your arms are going to go after?
I am slightly, but I'm wondering, I'm in the process. I've made an application for arms. Under a hyphenated last name.
No, then forget that. You'll be known as maiden name, married name. So you'll be Smith or Jones. You won't be Smith-White or Jones, right? And you'd be wise to make sure that your birth name attaches to your children. Who, I mean, you look about 21, so you probably haven't had kids yet. But
I've got 5.
Okay, right, well, my mistake.
No, and because I'm thinking, because I'm an Owen-Thomas. I have children with the last name Owen. I have children with the last name Thomas. My maiden name is Skank, which I was so happy to get rid of. It was
Skank. I love it. I married one lady called me, and her surname was Pratt, which is quite insulting in Britain. So she's remained Durie even after her divorce long ago.
Well, the thing that's a nice thing here is girls, when they get married, can choose to use any name they want. So when you can't inherit a marriage certificate, you could put any name you want, and that will change.
Provided that aspect of it is legal in your country.
Yeah.
There's some countries.
So I'm just saying, if my daughters, when they get married, choose to use a particular name and it matches mine, they should be okay.
Okay, who's going to inherit your arms?
Probably my youngest, not my eldest.
Wait a minute. Why you can't determine that? Who is your actual heir?
My heir is I guess my eldest, yeah.
And the heir is going to inherit your arms, and that heir should, unless that person, unless she renounces it or he renounces it in favour of one of his siblings. Yeah, but that's a slightly complicated process, but it is possible. I've known people renounce arms in favour of a brother. It's about to happen to a chiefship, actually. The eldest son says, no, give it to Jim, he's next along.
Interesting.
But your arms, therefore, aren't, let's call them genealogical arms.
No.
Right. Now, that doesn't matter because all arms are personal. Your arm don't go with Barney. You can sell the Barney, get all the money back, fix your roof, and you've still got the arms. Yeah?
Okay, I see. All right.
Right, but they will go down to your heir-in-law. Yeah? Make sure that person has the right surname. Start now. How old is your eldest?
38.
Oh boy. And probably married and has kids and
Well, actually, she's recently divorced and has no children.
You and I need to talk, okay? We need lunch, right?
We need lunch. The next time I'm in Scotland, we'll do that.
I was in New York last week. Where were you? Yeah.
Actually, you were in Boston last week, weren't you?
I was in Boston. I was in New York, and then I went to a games in North Carolina.
I'm in New York.
No hurricane damage, so there you are.
Yeah, no, I'm in New York.
Call me.
I saw that you were in Boston because I belong to that organization.
The
American Ancestors.
Oh, right. Okay. That was an interesting. I'm going to talk about this. That was an interesting congress. We have every 2 years, we have a major congress where the Academy of Genealogy comes together with the Academy of Heraldry. And this was the first time that joint meeting had been held in America, in continental North America. No, in North America. And therefore, they wanted to put on a good horse and pony show. No better people to do it than the New England's Hysterical Society, whatever they're called. Right. And they were fine, and they really did us proud. A lot of the more crusty Europeans were talking about the place, saying, well, should have had this in Milan or Bologna or something, but most of us had a great time. And the thing about Boston is, this, about Boston? So many Irish pubs, so little time.
They're famous for that. Yes.
They are famous for that. Call me, right?
Okay. Next time I'm there, I'll probably be there. I'd go every summer, so.
No, just send me an email. We'll sort this out before you get here, and we'll have an answer for you when you're alive.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm looking at the time.
Yes.
I think we're a little bit extended, but that's wonderful. And I think this. Thank you for Bruce for staying on and joining. We will share. Looking around the virtual room, is there anyone else has some questions for Bruce?
I do have a follow on, and Fernando, if I may make the suggestion that as long as people want to keep talking and as long as Bruce is willing to listen, that
fine, cool.
Just keep the cameras rolling and let Jim do what he can in post production, and people that need to leave to go ahead and leave as they need to. My question is on designation of one's heir. There is some rumor floating around out there that if I choose not to allow my son, only son, to inherit, that I could go to Lion and petition that Lion agreed to allow my nephew to inherit my arms rather than my son, and that there is some method by which that could happen. Is that
okay? Only if the heirs in line both renounce their claim. You can't do it. You can't do an end run around them. Like my father did with me. I did not get the silver cup I wanted. He gave it to my nephew. Right? You can't do that with arms. You have to do it properly. There is an heir. If the heir renounces, it goes to the next heir. If that heir renounces, do it that way. Now, a chiefship, you can nominate an heir, but not arms. They are strictly by the laws of inheritance. There's two classes of inheritance in Scotland. There's what we call movables. That's anything you can pick up and carry, including, money, furniture, knives and forks, cows. Try that. And then there's immovables, also called heritables, and that's houses, lands, that kind of thing. And a coat of arms is one of those. It's called an incorporeal heritable. And therefore it's treated the same way as something impartable, like a house, and has to go to the heir. Now, we did away with primogeniture in Scotland, I believe, in 1962, and it used to be assumed that the eldest son or the heir would get the entire house and the entire estate. We did away with that, but would you believe there's a line at the bottom of that legislation that says this does not apply to titles, peerages, honours, dignities, or coats of arms. Incredible. So you're going to do it properly. You can't just bypass your second son because you don't like him, or you didn't cut the lawn last weekend, or something. Okay.
What about stepchildren?
Yeah. Well, stepchildren are fine. They become the legal children of the two parents who are married, and therefore they're I think they're okay. Do not quote me on this. I have to look into that one. I have had cases where there is only, so the man has no children, marries the woman, and she's got 2 kids. Yeah. I have seen arms pass to the eldest of those children. But when you're in a circumstance of yours, mine, and ours, I'm not quite sure how that works. I think it might go to the firstborn child of the marriage. And
That's would be my youngest.
back up the ladder, Oh boy, I don't know.
See, that's what I'm saying. I got complex.
Well, it'd be worth exploring, but my son, the lawyer, will have an interesting view on that. And I will, if you need me to, check it out with Line Court and see what they say.
It's just a question. Modern society, being as it is.
New families, This is why all these laws I've talked about need to be changed, because it's ridiculous that a couple has a child by surrogacy and the kid is not treated precisely the same way. Yeah. In every way. It's ridiculous that, we have a case in Scotland back in the 1950s where a change of sex or gender meant that the inheritance went a completely different way. And all of that has to be taken into account nowadays.
Lord Lyon still granting heraldic flags at the...
Oh, sure. If you want a flag, get a flag. But the flag you get depends on who you are. Yeah. Someone with a tail, in other words, a following, will get a particular kind of standard. Banners typically get pennons and things like that. But of course, there are some flags you can get without asking the Lord Lion. Anyone can have a house flag or a carrying flag. The kind of thing you see people marching, which only has your arms on it, not the shield. Notice the arms, or a square or rectangular banner. And that's the one you can stick outside your house as well. But anything more complicated that actually involves marshalling things together, like a standard. You're aware there's a standard and a banner. Yeah, a banner's rectangular, a standard is triangular. And it usually comes to a point, but if it has a kind of swallowtail in the end, that means you have a following. And you'll get a standard if you're big enough to have a following, like a chief or an earl or something, and you'll get a banner, a pennon, if you're a baron, for example. If you will email me, I will send you examples of recent examples of grants of that. You should also, and here's my tip for the day, you should also apply for a badge. This is not the same as the crest. It might have the same things in it as the crest, but it will have your motto around it, and then it will have something else around it too. And the badge is a different heraldic thing from a crest. And the great advantage of it is you can display the badge on your flag. You can use it in other ways. I assume you have 20 servants who all wear liveried uniform. You can put it on their buttons. And also you can you can allow people to wear that badge if they are, in a sense, small followers of you or your family members, for example. It's a good idea. And then you get a pencil with the badge on, and you can stick it in the front of your car when you're driving about. If the Pakistani ambassador can do it, so can you. Email me on that one, and I will tell you what I mean. It's not even complicated. You just apply.
Very good.
People.
But just,
Anyone else?
just to clarify that last comment, Bruce, what kinds of heraldic flags is the current lion likely to approve for?
All of them, if you can justify it. And they're justified by rank and by tail, as we say, following. Barons who have no tail, typically, feudal barons who have no tail, typically get a pen. And I'll show you some examples if you want.
No Guidon.
You're not going to get some 20-foot long streamer. Not happening, right? The Ireland Chiefs of good. Yeah.
I will have to drop in a few minutes, but
Okay.
I did want to thank you, Bruce, and everyone else for staying on. As agreed, we'll share the presentation or the information in the presentation and this segment of the Q&A, which has been very insightful and excellent, with the membership, and then compile questions that that may be outstanding or based on the presentation and this segment, and then we'll share those with you if that's fine.
May I show you two things?
Absolutely, please.
Some of you will know, last year I produced this.
Right.
It's all the arms and bearings, well, it's all the arms registered in Scotland between 1971 up to 5 years ago. The second companion volume is almost ready. And this contains the crests, mottos, supporters, badges, flags of the same people at the same time. And this is the final proof version. And if I ever get round to it in the next few days, I will approve the proof and it will be available for sale. If anyone wants to email me, I'll tell you exactly where you can get it cheaper than you can on Amazon.
Excellent. I've got the blue version.
Got the first one? Good. Well, that's now in its second edition because the first edition just sold out. Now, that doesn't mean it was a huge print run, not at all. My publisher said it leapt off the shelves in its dozens. not exactly John Grisham territory, but
All right. Well, look, thank you very much. And of course, and as Cliff rightly says, I mean, anyone that wants to stay on and Bruce,
oh yeah,
I'm a little late for you as well. It looks kind of late. All right. Well, I leave you with that. Thank you so much for to everyone, and again, thanks to Cliff and Jim especially for coordinating this. Have a good rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, very much for taking.
You're welcome. Please contact me if you want to.
Yeah, it sounds like I should.
I think you've got a complicated family situation there, you know.
It doesn't feel that way.
That came out wrong. I think we need to explore how we can fulfill your needs, given your family.
Yeah, and where I'm going to go, and
If only one of your children had your maiden surname, only that person could inherit your arms.
I am not asking any of my daughters to take on the name Skank. It has very ugly connotations in the United States.
I know, but is that the name the arms are in?
No.
Well, then you must take on the name of the arms.
Yeah, and that's why I'm going to have to wait and see what Lord Lion's wisdom provides me, since I'm on my name.
Who's navigating this process for you,
Michael Yellowies.
Like Mike Yellowies?
Yes.
Oh, well, say hello, Mike. He usually bounces these things to me. He obviously fancied this one himself.
Yeah, I will have to wait and see. We'll see what happens, and I'm sure there'll be stuff going back and forth because I've asked for of Innerwick, and I think I'm going to get a Innerwick castle. So we'll see.
That won't be mentioned on your letters patent,
No,
of course,
no.
anymore. Don't do that. And you won't get the word baron or barony.
I'm in the learning process here.
Here's the point. I'm sure everybody knows this, but buying a Scottish feudal barony brings you within the jurisdiction of the Lordlag. That's where you can get arms. It doesn't guarantee. In fact, I guarantee they won't put the name of the barony or the fact that you are a feudal barony in your patent. What you will get is a great helm indicative of a baron. All that will say in your letters patent is a helm according to her rank.
Yes, and
that would be the same if you were a duke. That's all you would get. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm fine with that. All right. I do have to run.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff, thank you. Jim, thank you. All right. To all, a very excellent evening or afternoon. Sláinte.
Bye-bye.
Farewell.
Farewell.
All right, so it's sending out.
Hey, Ronnie.
How are you, Bruce?
Okay, man. Okay. How's the White Lion these days?
The White Lion lives on, but it's getting more and more tenuous. A bit of political problems in that part of the world, I'm sorry to say.
I betcha.
It's very, very worrisome. But it's nice to have someone looking after us in Scotland, and I appreciate this new to me organization. I hope that all goes well for them.
Just can I say this, just so everybody's clear? I don't think I'm giving anything away. I know I'm not, because it's public. Ronnie has also bought a couple of Feudal Earldoms. And people often wonder whether a Feudal Earldom is a different creature from a feudal barony. And Lion Seller decided they're not. They're all of the genus Barrow, and therefore they're treated exactly the same. Yeah, is that your experience?
Well, to begin with, to say that I purchased anything would not be exactly correct. When the feudal system was ended, I realized that I had some problems with getting things assigned to my children and whether they would still be available. And I traded a bit of things with people who had things that I wanted or might want.
So they were granted you, yeah.
So none of my children, nothing was actually purchased.
Acquired. We call it conquest. Anything you don't inherit is called conquest in Scotland. Doesn't mean you've got to take off your jacket and fight for it. It just means it wasn't inherited.
Well, I'm aware of the differences, but and no one knows how it's going to end anywhere. I mean, the feudal system ended on November 28th, and we haven't had any cases that decided what's going to come forward.
2004. Well, Robin Blair, who was lying at that time, did some very nifty footwork with the Scottish government. They were just going to abolish the whole system completely, wipe out baronies. No need for it. They're not attached to land anymore, so no point to them. Robin went down there and pointed out that 1,500 holders of baronies could potentially request compensation at about £100,000 each. So that's 150 million, yeah? And no government in its right mind is not going to build a hospital or a couple of schools just to cheer up some feudal barons. So therefore, they left the thing in place which said nothing in this act affects the dignity of a barony, just that there's no land attached. But it did mean that things like the cap of maintenance went away because there's nothing to maintain. It's a bare superiority. And that's how it came about. And that's where it stays right now. Now, the next Lion, who will be in post middle of 2026, may take a different view.
Please God that he does. I hope that he does.
No, that may take a more radical view and say no baronies. I'm not granting arms to any baron.
Well, I was to take one bit of argument there. It wasn't Robin Blair who did that. It was Ainsley Nairn. Ainsley Nairn, who was Baron Cleef. He was the one that convinced Blair to do that. And all feudal barons have a great thanks to give to
to Ainsley then, because he created that.
Ainsley was one extra voice in a huge panoply of stuff, including professionals like me who said you're actually denting people's business. Imagine how Brian Hamilton felt, you know?
I imagine.
Now, Brian Hamilton and his wife Margaret, they took the Lord Lion to court. They took him to a commercial court, which they could, because it wasn't on the basis of heraldry. And Lady Wolfe said, Lord Lion can do whatever he wants in his jurisdiction. That's it. So the next lion, and you know that no lion is bound by previous lions, next lion might say, I'm going to award feudal baronies to, no, stupid. No more will the possession of a piece of paper saying that you've bought a feudal barony will entitle you to a coat of arms. Or they may just continue the current dual model system. Or they may propose some kind of difference that makes it clear that this is an extra jurisdictional matter or something like that. It's a bit like the 1783 exception. Does everybody know about the 1783 exception?
I do not.
All right, here's a good one. I have a lot of clients in America, for example, who cannot prove their genealogy across the pond to Scotland. But if they're clearly Scottish, like they're called, McDribble or McSweaty or something, and if they were alive, if one of their ancestors was alive in America before 1783, chances are I will get them a coat of arms. The reason is that 1783, Treaty of Paris, that was when Britain stopped pretending it was in charge of America. Also stopped pretending it was King France, so they took the fleur-de-lis off the arms. But any Lord Lion before then would have had jurisdiction on anyone Scottish in America. And therefore you can say, Mr. Crawford here, his many great-grandfather was in America before 1783, therefore he may petition for arms. And it works. It really works, let me tell you.
Well, that would have to be done through the paternal line.
Only in the surname, right the way back, yeah. No grandmothers, okay? Not happening.
We were speaking of, before you arrived, Bruce, of the need to have a good set of information, if you will, on the topics that we've been discussing. And one of the next treatise that I'm going to invite you to participate in is on this very topic. That looking at the inheritance of baronies and the inheritance of arms. And with baronies, it becomes particularly interesting when you have someone who dies intestate, baron dies intestate.
No such thing in Scotland, because the rules of inheritance of heritable inheritance, that's say real. We use the term real property in the way that Americans mean real estate. Same concept, yeah. There's my inheritance, the money I've got in the bank, and then there's my real inheritance, which is the land I'm sitting on, my coat of arms, any title I have, that kind of thing. And I've lost track of your question. Sorry, back to the start.
If a baron dies intestate, then
doesn't matter. The law of inheritance says it goes to the heir. You don't need to put it in a will. In fact, I'd recommend you don't. In many ways.
So it works.
They won't challenge a will. They can't challenge a straight inheritance.
So the barony would follow the arms then.
No, well, you can sell the barony, you've still got the arms, and then the arms will pass to your heir. You don't need to pass the barony on for the. I know a number of people who buy a barony on a loan, they get a coat of arms, and then they sell the barony at a slight profit, enough to pay for their arms, and then they're happy. They don't need the barony.
I suppose that was misspeaking to say that the barony would follow the arms. In other words, they would follow the same rules.
The same person, yes. The same person would inherit both. Absolutely. We used to have a barony. My family was Baron of Durie, Durie of Durie. And then an ancestor got into trouble with his lawyer in 1614 And the lawyer said, well, to pay all your debts, I'll just take your barony and the land. And he said, sure. And then 3 generations on, they sold it to another person, Christie's family, who's still there. So Peter Christie is sitting on the barony of Durie. And I keep saying to him, Peter, you're just keeping it warm for me, pal, you know? I'm going to get it back. And he says, show me the money.
Well, that reminds me of a very bad joke. Actually, it's a very good joke. And because he's now established that you can have it, you just have to say the right price.
Absolutely. Quite right. I've got a good joke for you. Guy rushes into his normal bar, usual bar, and he says, quick! And he's 6 double whiskies and a pint of Guinness. So the barman's rushing about doing all the whiskies off the oak ticks, puts them down. Then he goes away to pour the Guinness, which takes 5 minutes, you know? When he comes back, all the whiskies are finished. They're all vanished. And he said, so you drank those quickly? And the man said, well, if you had what I have, you could have drunk them quickly as well. So really, what do you have? He said, $5. Very Scottish concepts. That's another one. Come on, we're enjoying this. Let's go.
And we're talking about jokes now.
No, we're talking about heraldry and things that abutting to it.
It's been curious to me, in recent times I've been seeing more discussion coming of, your family was comes from a long line of warriors, so we're going to put and insist on putting a chevron on your arms.
That's not what a chevron means.
I use that as an example, but a lot of these things are identified as having some significance that unless you know what the significance is,
right,
that it would not tell you anything.
Let me just slice right through that. There was a big industry in the 17th century of apportioning meaning to charges. If you have a crescent, it means you are this. If you have a chevron, it means that your house offers shelter to people, and it's all nonsense. It was people looking for meaning. It was mythologizing. If you look at the arms and fife, they all look, doesn't matter the surname, they all look very similar to my arms. I'm from the Kingdom of Fife, but Ochterlony and Oliphant and Balfour and various others, they're quite very similar. Chevron, couple of crescents, colours differ, you know. It was just kind of local style, much in the same way as people dress one way in Chicago, you know, zoot suit, fedora hat, violin case, from they do in Louisiana, and high-waisted trousers, big shoulders. It's just a local thing, the way people adopted them. It doesn't even mean the family's in any way connected. And it's a challenge for me as someone who helps people design arms to find something that is obviously connected to the surname, but also reflects where they are. So, for example, I had one guy recently, who his family spent 3 generations in Virginia, so we put 3 cotton balls on the chief of his arms. Yeah, someone else in Texas, this is hilarious, who wanted something indicative of Texas, right in the middle of her shield, bang, there. And she said, how about a yellow rose? I said, sure, you can have a yellow rose of Texas on your shield. Lord Wine won't object to that. Be aware, the yellow rose of Texas is not a flower. It's a black woman of mixed heritage. High yellow, right? She went away from that. She got a Texas star. Arms are meaningful, but they don't contain symbolism, except at the level of Burgee. Crescent often means second son. Martlet often means a third son. That kind of thing. Other than that, I mean, go hang. The earliest arms, the very earliest arms, are the simplest. People chose simple geometric designs. So Bruce, a saltire and a chief red. Crosby, a cross, obviously, because uh, simple design, sometimes with the lines in Grail or in Vector or whatever, but they are the most straightforward arms, and they've got complicated ever since, the 13th century, for obvious reasons. But if you can simplify arms, much better. And the Lord Lion this current Lord Lion has what he calls the fridge magnet test. People suggest really complicated arms with all sorts of charges and aspects to them, and he says to them, if you can't tell what this is on the fridge, 2 inches square, you're not getting the arms. Keep it simple. And that makes sense, because originally what were arms for? They were to identify people on the battlefield who were on your side, and more importantly, on the other side. And if you're going to stand there for 10 minutes trying to interpret this nonsense, you're going to get broadsworded or stabbed or something. It has to be obvious.
My favorite is the Duke of Mopford. Herman. Done.
My favourite is the Duke of Brittany, which are actually English arms, which is gold on white. And that's the only place I've ever seen a medal on a medal. But he got away with it because he was the son of the king at the time. Yeah.
Who was it? King of Jerusalem.
That's right. That's the same. Actually, I think it was the same guy.
Yeah.
We made up arms, and all comes out of the Crusades. It was tightened up after that. It wasn't the College of Arms then, but the English Heralds tightened up on that remarkably. Isn't it wonderful, though, that you're all operating under a Scottish jurisdiction where all of this is statute law, as opposed to England, where it's very much, finger in the wind. And there's no differencing for cadences. So you can have 95 people with exactly the same coat of arms because they all descend from one person. Whereas in Scotland, put the arms together and they're like a visual family tree. And that's a powerful concept. So we stick to it. Something I should have said earlier was, of course, if you're having difficulty with your kids, then there's no reason why your second, third, fourth child can't all petition for arms in their own right. And then they with a cadence, with a difference, and then they've established their own line. And one of your barons, he won't mind me saying, Sean Collin, got arms for his son and his daughter in her own right, separate from his own, but at the same time. So their arms can now racket down their heirs. And that's the way to do it, frankly. I should have said that to Brooke when she was on. Get them all a coat of arms, and then it won't be an issue.
You're muted.
Ronnie.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. All 5 of my children have arms in their own right.
You have to call them your Majesty.
Inneryne.
Well, in this particular forum, not many people know who I actually am, or when they don't know who we are, I should say.
Peculiarity of Scotland that you could have an earl, a feudal baron, a territorial estate holder, a lower order lord, and a bishop.
And
all addressed as Durie. Although there's 6 different people in the same room because of the way we use the addressing system.
in the US, that's a very difficult thing to explain.
Yeah, I bet.
I won't even try. Perfectly fine.
Have you paid for explaining it, so I don't care.
What is the most unusual or most entertaining arms story that you have personally?
But the most interesting thing I've seen in a coat of arms is something I'd never heard of, which was some mythical beast, Purfold. And I'd never heard of the mythical beast, and I had no idea what Purfold meant, but arms were granted. I've seen people put things into their arms which are, we call it canting, like puns, like Crosby has a cross and that kind of thing. And someone called, a very typical example is people called Harrison will often get hedgehogs in their arms, because the French word hedgehog is, anybody? Hérisson, yeah? And in Scots heraldry, it's known as a hurchin. So if you ever see a hedgehog, that person is called Harrison or Harris sometimes. And the best one I saw recently was someone who wanted, somebody asked me, this didn't happen. He said, can I get, as supporters, can I get 2 pole dancers? I said, well, one, you're not getting supporters. Forget it. Even if you did, you have to understand the Lord Lion will give you what he wants. Yeah, it's not up to you. And by the way, there is no right to arms, except in the narrow sense of I inherited mine from my father. But arms are granted by grace, not of right. And nobody can thump the desk, kick the chair and say, I've got a right to these arms. You don't. The Lord Lion will give you what the Lord Lion feels you deserve if you are a virtuous and well-deserving person.
Truth of the matter is that the Lord Lion, from one lion to another, the rules don't stay the same.
I'm sorry, I missed that. They all...
Well, the rules don't stay the same from one lion to another.
No, that's right. Yeah, lions change their view on the rules, but the law is always there. And lions interpret it in different ways, as is their right. And they're all operating under an individual warrant from the king. You know, when a Lord Lion leaves, that warrant dies, and a new lion immediately is in place with a new warrant. And it always says the same thing. You know, you will visit and grant arms to blah, blah, blah in such a way. But it's a new warrant. It's a new day in the morning. We had a lot of fun, as you can imagine, heraldically, during the sad demise of Queen Elizabeth and the arrival of King Charles III, King of Scots. And the Lion Court was front and centre in all of that. You'll see them on the television, marching in front of the coffin and then marching at the mission. And I have to tell this story, actually. There was some tension, shall we say, between the Lion Office and the College of Arms. The College of Arms, for some unknown reason, thinks it's senior. Well, it really isn't, because in Scotland, the legal system is completely different and not attached to the English legal system. However, Garter was able to convince the Earl of Norwich, the Earl Marshal, that because the College of Arms were English, they should stand closest to the coffin, and then it should go down in precedence to the Scottish heralds at the front. When the television cameras turn up, guess who's in front of the camera? So the Scottish heralds, right? So in PR terms, they blew that one completely. And all the royal archers surrounding the coffin, they're obviously Scottish. As a consequence of that, Lord Lion got extra powers. He is now more in control of anything ceremonial and processional. I mean, he always was, but various government departments have taken bits of it off Lord Lions in the past. Well, it's all come cycling back. It's quite clear that only the Lion Court, Lion Office, and the person of the Lord Lion can actually work out something as complicated as who walks into St. Giles first. On an occasion like the death of a queen, yeah. And they got a lot of props for it, I tell you.
All right, Bruce. Well, I myself have to. That's all the doctors will allow me at the moment.
Well, get well, Rory. Get well. Yeah.
Well, I'm working on it. I look forward to seeing you the St. Andrews festivities and things. I assume you'll be.
I tend not to go to these. I don't behave well at dinners. I want to throw bread and stuff. You know.
Well.
I'm coming to the next one, so I'll see you there. Maybe at the same table, maybe not. Yeah.
Oh, I look forward to that, seeing you. And I thank the rest of you gentlemen.
It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. I've enjoyed it, and I only want to encourage people to better understanding of heraldry. Really.
Thank you.
Everyone who was involved in this sort of thing, we all care about heraldry to a great degree.
Yeah. Let's keep it going before it gets taken away from us.
I agree.
While we have a king, it won't disappear. King Charles is committed to heraldry in Scotland, I can tell you. And I think we're okay until Charlie goes. But I'll be retired, gone mad, or being shot by that time, so it's no matter to me.
Thank you again.